Hey up everyone, in today's video we're going to be talking about who is the greatest bantamweight of all time, because I see many of times now on Twitter, on any sort of social media page, talking about who the greatest bantamweight of all time is, and people chucking the toys out the pram, arguing amongst each other over who is the greatest bantamweight of all time. I see several different names, so now we're going to get a definitive answer on who is the greatest bantamweight of all time. Now when we discuss about who is the potential bantamweight GOAT, we have four candidates. We have the Dominator Dominick Cruz, Aljamain Sterling, TJ Dillashaw, and Merab Dvalishvili. So now that we've established the four candidates for the bantamweight GOAT, let's go and review their resumes. To start things off, we're going to go with Dominick Cruz and look through his career. Now, obviously, he was 8-0, and then he met Uriah Faber, got submitted in, the first round, but there's no shame there, given that he was quite young, I believe. I think he would have been, mid-20s or something like that, when he come across Uriah Faber, who was the guy in the bantamweight division at that point. This was WEC days, this was when I was 7 years old. He's also got a win over Ian McCall, okay, quite decent. Joseph Benavidez, again, okay, quite decent. Yes, I know the flyweights, but regardless, still decent names to have on your resume. Brian Bowles, always remember him because he just had a mop head. I always remember in the UFC games. Another win over Joseph Benavidez, but this time a split decision. Scott Jorgensen, okay. Uriah Faber, so he avenged that loss. This was when the WEC was brought out by the UFC. So this was his UFC debut to dictate who is the bantamweight king in the UFC. He wins in the rematch against Uriah Faber. And then after this, he beats Demetrius Johnson. So starting off very strong when it comes to the UFC career as Uriah Faber, who again was the guy at the time. And then also Demetrius Johnson, which ended up aging like wine, given that Demetrius Johnson is one of the greatest of all time. Yes, he would have been way too small. He was very small for that fight. But regardless, still a great name to have on your resume. And then I believe this is when he started to get injured loads. He had a cancelled fight against Faber. I remember the one against Renan Barão, because Renan Barão became that guy whilst Dominick Cruz was out injured, and that was going to be an absolutely gigantic fight. But unfortunately, Cruz kept on picking up injuries, but he was able to come back later on in the year, get a knockout. Got a knockout in the first round. That's crazy to think about Dominick Cruz getting a knockout in the first round. But then he came across TJ Dillashaw after being out for almost 2 years, a year and a half. You know, that's really impressive, I'm going to be honest with you. I remember this. This was a close fight as well, but man, coming off the couch, well, he didn't come off the couch, but, you know, coming off from such a long layoff and taking on TJ Dillashaw, who's another one of the candidates, that's really impressive. So, yeah, that's a really big name. A prime TJ Dillashaw on your record is a great name to have. And then the trilogy with Uriah Faber, but Faber at this point was kind of fucking washed. Got the loss to Cody Garbrandt. That was like Garbrandt's shot, like lightning in a bottle, whatever the fucking term is. Forgot about the fight against Jimmy Rivera being cancelled and Johnny Lineker, but he probably would have won about 3 of those anyways. Lost to Henry Cejudo. Whatever, really. That was a short notice fight, to be fair to him. Beat Casey Kenny, beat Pedro Munoz, and lost to Chito Vera, and we haven't seen him fight since. But during that prime period, he's got some big names, but I feel like with Cruz, the thing is, he's got big names on his resume. But I feel like there's an asterisk with, well, the Demetrius one, he's just super small. But then other than that, it's just Faber twice, really. Benavidez, who was a flyweight. Demetrius Johnson, who was a flyweight. TJ Dillashaw was amazing, to be fair. But is that really it? I don't know. I think it's a great record, resume, whatever. I think it's great. But is it the GOAT? I'm not entirely sure. And now we go on and jump over to Aljamain Sterling's resume. So he was undefeated, made his UFC debut all the way back in 2014, so 11 years ago now, which is crazy. Beat Cody Gibson, beat Hugo Viana, beat Mizugaki, who Cruz knocked out within the first round, beat Johnny Eduardo, and then he lost his first ever fight to Brian Caraway. And I remember this fight, and I was gutted because Caraway was the deserved winner. I know it was split, but I think it was quite obvious for Brian Caraway. But I remember going into this fight, and there was a lot of hype behind Aljamain Sterling. So it's like someone who was like quite fresh into watching UFC events, I was really tuned in to a big prospect, wanting to see what he was like. And he lost to Brian Caraway, who was really not really a great fighter or anything. Yeah, he was okay, but nothing special. Also lost to Rafael Asuncao, but Asuncao at the time was doing okay despite being quite old. He was still, quite up there really. I think that's when he got knocked out or submitted by Marlon Moraes as well. So Asuncao was still decent at that time. Got a win against Augusto Mendes. Got a win against Renan Barão, but Renan Barão at this point was quite washed in all fairness, but still a big name to have on your resume. And then he got knocked out by Marlon Moraes. The fucking brutal knockout in all fairness. A brilliant knockout from Marlon Moraes. But yeah, so that led him to 3 losses in his career. He then beat Brett Johns and was a bit of a hype train around him because he was undefeated Welsh submission artist, but he beat Brett Johns, beat Cody Stamann, beat Jimmy Rivera, beat Pedro Munoz, beat Corey Sanders. Oh man, this is a really good winning streak right here. Is it anything to thingy about? No, but Brett Johns, okay. Cody Stamann, okay. Jimmy Rivera at that point, really good win. Pedro Munoz at that point, very solid win. Corey Sandhagen, excellent win, a fantastic win. Getting rid of air in the first round, I remember that was crazy. Guaranteed himself with a title fight against PTN. He got the win in that fight, but everyone kind of classes it as a loss, which is understandable, really. But he got the DQ win over PTN, but it didn't matter anyway because in the rematch, he got the win against PTN, and it was quite controversial because a lot of people thought PTN won. And even as a massive PTN glazer myself, I scored it for Aljamain Sterling despite it being super close. It was just because Jan didn't do much in that first round. That first round was really the toss-up round, and yeah, you could really flip a coin on that. But then this is when, his championship reign, so outside of his championship reign, I feel fantastic. But then when you get to his championship reign, it's just full of asterisks, really. The PTN, the first one, yeah, it's a win, but it's a DQ win, so, and it was going PTN's way. The rematch, super fucking close. If you gave it to PTN, no one would argue with it. So again, there's a bit of an asterisk there because it was so razor close, it was super fucking close. I also don't think it helped because PTN on fight week, his grappling coach wasn't able to travel with him, which obviously played a part. Not being able to have your grapple coach going against a grappler in a highly anticipated rematch, it does play a big part. And then he beat TJ Dillashaw, and this wasn't Aljo's fault. TJ had a fucked up shoulder, and he beat TJ easily, but mainly because he was washed and had a fucked up shoulder. But that's not Aljo's fault, but it's still something you have to take into consideration. Context does matter. Then have Henry Cejudo. It was a split, and I saw people say Cejudo won. I thought it was a competitive, close fight, but it was easy to judge, and I think Aljo was the rightful winner in this fight. Yes, Cejudo had been out for a long time, but like we saw with Dominic Cruz earlier, he was able to win after a long layoff, and so I think people are a bit too harsh on what Henry Cejudo won when it comes to, trying to push a bit of a narrative that maybe Cejudo should have won and that he struggled against a former flyweight. I think that's a bit harsh. I think that's a very decent win. And then obviously he lost to Sean O'Malley, and that was the end of his bantamweight tenure. We don't have to talk about anything else because, again, that was the end of his bantamweight resume, career, whatever. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I lean more for Aljo, I'll be honest with you. I think what people just use against Aljo is that he's not the most fun to watch. In all fairness, I think people who bring up Dominic Cruz, a lot of them didn't watch him fight. Dominic Cruz wasn't always the most fun and most entertaining of fighters to watch. He was quite, not dull, but he was also quite uneventful to watch at times as well. More fun than Aljo, I will admit. But yeah, it's neck and neck between Aljo and Cruz for me. I low-key favour Aljo, I think, at the moment. But let's look at the other two candidates. We are now going to move on to TJ Dillashaw. Started off great, was on The Ultimate Fighter, met John Dodson in the finale and lost to him by the first round via knockout. But in all fairness, John Dodson, even though he was a flyweight, he did pack a punch. COD reference. No, I'm taking the piss. But yeah, he did actually have really good power, John Dodson, despite being very small. He was super explosive. And if I remember correctly, he even dropped PTN. He dropped a lot of people even when he moved up to the bantamweight division. He dropped several people. So yeah, losing to John Dodson, especially when he was so young, no real shame in that. Beat a couple of other guys. But then he got a loss against Rafael Asuncao as well. And then he was able to get a win against Mike Easton. But then straight after that, he was able to get skyrocketed into the championship fight against Renan Barão. And I believe that was because Renan Barão had a fight against someone else, or was scheduled to fight someone else. And then they had to pull out with an injury. In stepped TJ Dillashaw and got the win on short notice. And it was like, he completely dominated Renan Barão. And Renan Barão was like, what? 32-1. It was butchering everyone, battered Uriah Faber a couple of times. Was a top dog in the bantamweight division now that Dominic Cruz was gone. Everyone was thinking very highly of him, and TJ Dillashaw just absolutely smoked him and started the downfall of Renan Barão and really derailed his career completely. Beat Joe Soto, got a fucking finish in the 5th round. Don't remember anything about that fight. And then we did the rematch with Renan Barão, and again he just absolutely smoked Renan Barão and finished him sooner in the 4th round. But then that's when he got the loss against Dominic Cruz. And in all fairness, I didn't really mention it with the Dominic Cruz one when I was going through Dominic Cruz's record. But this was a razor thin fight. This was a super close fight. I actually need to rewatch this fight. I haven't watched it since I watched it back in 2016 when I was younger and probably didn't know as much about MMA. Well, I definitely wouldn't. I don't know what I'm saying probably. But regardless, yeah, it was a super close fight. And yeah, maybe he should have won this being in his prime. But Dominic Cruz, again, he is one of the GOATs, so it's only fair. He then came back. Was this UFC 200? Yes, it was. UFC 200. Where he came back against Rafael Asuncao, looked fucking amazing from what I remember, and also styled on John Lineker as well. I remember both of those performances because they were really good. It was like TJ 2.0, it felt like, in my opinion. It's like he turned a new page in his book because he looked so much better. He was mixing it in so much more, and TJ looked really switched on and motivated to get that championship bout back. And then he got that fight against Cody Garbrandt when he got dropped in the 1st round. One of the best rivalries of all time. I loved the build-up, I loved the fight. It was a great fight, a great pay-per-view as well. UFC 217, one of my favourite pay-per-views of all time. Got dropped in the 1st round, came back in the 2nd. The rematch happened and he battered Cody in the 1st round. Made light work of it. And then he went down to flyweight, lost to Henry Cejudo, came back a few years later after getting injuries and whatnot. Oh no, he was banned, wasn't he, for EPO. And then he came back against Corey Sandhagen, got a dodgy decision there. A lot of people didn't think he won. I actually missed that fight out, unfortunately, because I was working in a warehouse at the time and I missed it and I was gutted. But regardless, yeah, he got a win against Corey Sandhagen. But even having a contested fight against a prime Sandhagen when you're washed and, you know, picking up constant injuries, like he was so... TJ at the end of his career was super, or should I say the last 2 fights, was super fragile when it came to his, like, just picking up injuries. To have a contested fight against Corey, I think says a lot, really. And Corey just let himself down with that, with having shit fight IQ. And then obviously he lost to Aljo, and I already mentioned he lost to Aljo because, you know, that injury thingy. But when you think about TJ, I think he was the most fun to watch in his prime, and out of all the GOAT conversations, he was the most entertaining to watch. And I think he probably had, talent-wise, I think he had the best prime. But then you also have to take into consideration, he did EPO. You know? He did EPO. So, I can't... I've got to remain faithful. I'm a big believer that if you cheat, I can't have you up there, so... I can't have TJ Dillashaw as the GOAT. Even if I don't think, even without that argument though, you can't really do that because he lost to Aljo, who's one of the GOATs, he lost to Cruz, who's one of the GOATs, and he lost to Cejudo, who, no, I can't have him as a fucking potential as a bantamweight GOAT, let's not be silly. But yeah, he was just, he would win some, lose some, and that's pretty much how it went. He doesn't feel like that whenever I think about TJ Dillashaw, because he was an elite talent, but that's just literally how it was. He won some, and he lost a few, and that's just how it went. very fun to watch in his day. Probably one of my favourite fighters to ever watch. But yeah, I can't have him as the GOAT of the bantamweight division. And now we get to our final candidate, which is the current bantamweight champion, Merab Dvalishvili. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, no, he definitely doesn't. He definitely shouldn't be in the conversation. But let's just look at his resume and go from there, because I feel like we should hear him out a bit more for the arguments of Merab. So starting off his MMA career, he actually took a loss, which is usually quite rare. He was 1-1 at one point as well, and then he went on a nice little winning streak. And that's when he got the infamous, spinning back fist against Rafi and Stotts, which is actually aged quite well considering Stotts is doing well in Bellator from what I believe. But yeah, he got that to get into the UFC when it was like, I forgot what this fight series is called on the UFC YouTube, but Dana White had it where he'll travel around, eat all this shit, do loads of these activities and watch fights, and he watched Merab and gave him a contract. Lost his UFC debut against Frankie Sains, and then he also lost to Ricky Simone. Bit of a weird one that was, because he was like out, but it was a weird one. But yeah, lost to Ricky Simone, but Ricky Simone at the time 12-1, was a prospect, so you know, whatever. Beat Brad Katona, decent win to be fair. But actually derailed it, stopped Brad Katona from being undefeated. And then just went on a nice winning streak. And then came back to the UFC. Oh wait, no, that was Sam. I was looking at Sambo. Fucking hell, my bad, guys. So I had a nice little winning streak. You got 1-2. Beat Casey Kenny, Gustavo Lopez. Beat John Dodson and absolutely dominated him from what I remember. Beat Cody Stanman. Beat Marlon Moraes, where he did get dropped quite badly. Beat Jose Aldo. Beat PTM. Beat Henry Cejudo. And beat Sean O'Malley. I know I just ran through all of them, but he was just picking up W after W after W. The only hours it's showing is for things outside of MMA, so I'm not including that. So his last loss in MMA came, 2018? 7 years ago. You know what I mean? So, and then since then has been on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 fight winning streak, and arguably the most stacked division in the UFC. Maybe second most if you want to consider lightweight as number 1, but either or one of those two. But that is crazy, and to think of the big names, John Dodson's a good name to have, even though it was at the end of his career, I will admit. Casey Kenny was quite good to have, in all fairness to him. I know Cruz had beat Casey Kenny as well, but yeah, Merab also beat Casey Kenny. Very solid win. Cody Stanman, okay win. Marlon Moraes was a wash Moraes, to be fair, but still a nice name. Jose Aldo was a very shit performance from Merab, but a super good name to have on your record. Dominated my boy PTM, but we're not going to go in depth about that one. Dominated Henry Cejudo, if we're being honest, other than the first round. And then dominated Sean O'Malley as well. And now he's got Umar next, and if he beats Umar and, maybe gets a few more title defenses, I think there'll be no question about whether he's the bantamweight GOAT. I don't want to say that he is the bantamweight GOAT right now, but the names he's got on his record, I really think he could become the bantamweight GOAT within a few more fights. Like I say, if he's able to beat Umar, maybe beat, I don't know, whoever's next after that, maybe Yan, or whatever, Yan in the rematch, whatever. I actually really want to see Merab in a rematch against someone to see how they approach the fight. But regardless, I think that's a very good resume. And again, a few fights away from being the GOAT of the bantamweight division, in my opinion. And now that we've gone through everyone's resume who could potentially be the bantamweight GOAT, let's list off who is the bantamweight GOAT and who isn't. Starting off, Merab. No, but possibly could if he gets a few more fights like I've already mentioned 1,000 times. TJ Dillashaw. No, he can't. Even if you take out the equation of EPO, just can't really give it to him, in my opinion. And then we go on to the two hard ones now, Aljo and Dominic Cruz. Who is the GOAT? Dominic Cruz. I'll flip-flop on this. 1 second I'll say Aljo, the next minute I'll probably say Dominic Cruz. It's just a hard one for me. I just feel like with Cruz, we've kind of been robbed a lot. We've been robbed a lot when it comes to Cruz with the injuries that he's taken throughout his career. Like, if he had a big win over Henan Barao, That would have helped him loads, you know. For me, it's Cruz, because the technical skill, I just think skill for skill wise, he was very well rounded. He had a very unique style, quite a unique personality too. Some of his trash talk was quite funny here and there. You know, like the build up to the Cody Garbrandt fight, the TJ Dillashaw fight, were all quite funny. Even a bit of the Henry Cejudo fight as well. Aljo, I do like him, but I don't know. I just think there's too many asterisks when it comes to his bantamweight tenure, if I'm being completely honest. Whereas Dominic Cruz, he was back in the early days, and to be able to be around for so long, and even though he lost to Chito Vera, and I know he lost to him again, but he was beating Chito. I don't know. I think it is Dominic Cruz, but you could give it either way, in my opinion. I just feel like the quality of his wins, Demetrius Johnson, Uriah Faber, TJ Dillashaw, a prime TJ Dillashaw who wasn't injured, I think I've got to go with Dominic Cruz. But who do you guys think is the greatest bantamweight of all time? Let me know in the comments, and let me know your reasoning to why you think whoever you think it is. Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching the video, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.